Jeff, is this, am I close enough to this one? Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the University of Utah. My name is Chris Nelson, the Communications Director. Let me just do a couple of introductions and housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to President Watkins. So first off, thanks for joining us again today. So we said Tuesday morning, our commitment is to continue to update the public and our campus community on this tragedy. As you can imagine, the university is still grieving, still mourning. We're particularly grateful and appreciative of the outpouring of support from our peer institutions from across the state and the country. The show of support we've received has meant a great deal to our campus community. Let me update you on some developments. The investigation remains ongoing, and Chief Brophy will provide you with a comprehensive update as where we are today. I do want to correct a misstatement made in Tuesday's briefing officially, in which we reported that Melvin Rowland was housed at the Fortitude Community Correctional Center. That was an incorrect information, and it was a mistake on our part. Earlier today, I can report that President Watkins had the honor of meeting with Lauren's parents and presenting them with Lauren's bachelor's degree in communications. I know the President will speak about that. In terms of today's briefing, remarks will be from President Ruth D. Watkins, Athletics Director Mark Harlan, and University Police Chief Dale Brophy. Each will read prepared remarks. Chief Brophy will go through a timeline, and then we'll take questions at the end. Again, as we get to questions, if we can just do one at a time, these mics are hot. They'll pick up your questions because our intention is to, again, post this full press conference onto YouTube so that our campus community can watch it as well. We're also joined by the university's Deputy Chief of Police, Rick McLennan, who's leading the investigation, so Rick will contribute as needed. Let me just finally say the university is deeply committed to transparency and openness in this matter. That said, we hope you can respect that it's an ongoing investigation, and we just simply aren't going to have some of the answers to the questions we know you have. As I said, the briefing has been recorded, and we will distribute a timeline that the Chief Brophy will go through at the end of the press conference. We'll also post that online so you can reference it there. So with that, I'll turn it over to President Watkins.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for being here with us today. This has been one of the most tragic events in the history of our campus. We are so deeply saddened by the death of Lauren McCluskey. As you know, I had just arrived in China when the horrible incident took place on our campus. I came back just as soon as I was able and as soon as I was informed of the tragedy. I've spoken with the McCluskey family, with Lauren's teammates, and with her friends. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to join with her friends and her teammates in athletics. The love, affection, and respect that they had for Lauren was palpable. I also spoke at the moving vigil for Lauren that was held at the Park Building last evening. That event was organized by our students, and the larger campus and community came together to honor and to mourn Lauren. This is my first opportunity to speak directly with you. Earlier today, I had the honor and the privilege of posthumously awarding a degree in communication to Lauren and presented that degree to her family. It was a gesture intended to express how important Lauren was to our campus community. We are all too aware that there is no degree that can adequately acknowledge the outstanding contributions that Lauren made to our campus and to this university and to her field of study. She was not only an outstanding student, but she distinguished herself as a member of our track and field team. As our athletics director, Mark Harlan, has said, Lauren was the very model of a student athlete. In my conversations with the McCluskey family, I've made it very clear that Lauren's legacy will never be forgotten. And equally important, that we are determined as a university to learn from this tragedy and to ensure that what we can do better at the University of Utah happens. We're committed to doing everything we can to prevent a tragedy like this from ever happening again on our campus. To that end, I'd like to share with you our plans to initiate two separate reviews, one of campus safety and the other specifically focused on the actions our police department took in response to Lauren's original complaint. In the first case, I have asked our campus safety task force to continue their work with the addition of an outside independent expert to take a look at every aspect of campus safety and security and to ensure that we are doing the best we can in the safety of our campus. While great progress was made in the past 2 years, I strongly believe that this tragic event requires us to revisit every aspect of campus safety and to do so with the help and guidance of an independent expert. We will share more information about this with you, but I want you to know that this is commencing immediately. I have also asked Chief Police, Chief Dale Brophy, to share more information with you on a second review, an independent review that we are launching into the actions taken by our department leading up to this tragic incident. Let me be clear, I have great faith that our University Police Department worked diligently on this incident. As you will hear, they too welcome an independent review. We will leave no stone unturned in determining anything we can do to prevent something like this from happening again on our campus. Let me close by saying that as a parent who was able to see our daughter graduate from college twice, I cannot adequately express my deepest sympathy for the unimaginable pain and loss and suffering that Lauren's family has been caused. I can only hope that they can take some comfort in the tremendous outpouring of support from the university community, from our students, our faculty, and our staff, and from the entire Salt Lake community. We will never forget Lauren. We will honor her memory by learning from this tragedy to make the University of Utah a safer place for everyone.
Thank you, President Watkins. We are and remain so in deep mourning over the tragic loss of a member of our athletics family. It remains incomprehensible that a vibrant and talented young woman could be taken from us in such a senseless, violent act. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to honor Lauren within our athletics family. We cried, we hugged, and we reminisced. I think we also took a very important first step in what will be a very, very long journey for us, a journey of healing. We saw the same unified spirit of love and sorrow when members of the campus community gathered at the park building at the end of the day. Lauren was respected, she was loved, and she will be missed by not only her teammates, but the entire athletics department. We are so very proud of her athletic and academic accomplishments and the way she lived her life as a real valued member of this community. President Watkins, thank you for awarding her that well-earned degree. And as such, she'll also get a framed jersey as any senior does when they finish the program. Something the parents asked of me before I could offer. Incredible people. Each of us will find our own way of honoring Lauren's legacy in the days and weeks ahead. And let me also take a moment to thank many universities and colleges across the country and their athletic departments that have reached out to try to help our young people, help our coaches, and help all our leadership to get through this. It means a lot. For now, what's most important, I want her family to know that we are their extended family here at the U. And we are here for them, and we always will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Let me start by just thanking everybody for being here today. I want to begin by once offering my condolences to the family. I've had the opportunity twice in the last 2 days to meet with the family, apprise them of all the details that are being released today, and making sure that they knew what was coming out before they read it in the paper. So thank you for accommodating the time request it took for us to do this thing and do it right and make sure that the family was honored and had all the details first. I know everybody here has a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions on the initial day as well, and I still have some questions. We're going to be answering questions for quite some time as this investigation continues, but I do have some questions that I can answer today, and I'm going to do that by one, walking through a timeline, which I'll use some notes to make sure I get all the detail that you deserve, and then by two, we'll post some questions and we'll take some questions at the end because I'd like to get as much detail out as possible. We're committed to doing what we need to do to make sure that everything on this campus is as safe as possible. The question is, do we have the appropriate protocols in place to prevent an event like this from happening? And that's why the full and independent investigation that President Watkins has talked about previously, I welcome. If there's any opportunity for us to improve what we're doing and make this campus safer, we're very open and we would love to do that. I'm proud of my team. What is going to be under review is our protocols we have in place, not the actions of the individual officers. I have confidence in my officers. They do a great job in a very, very tough environment on a daily basis, and their actions aren't in question. It's the protocols and where we need to go from here to make sure that our protocols go far enough. That said, the President and I both believe an outside review is needed so we can ensure our university is doing everything possible to protect this campus community. So now what I'd like to do is take you through the timeline, and we're trying to be as complete as possible, of the events surrounding October 22nd and what led up to those events. We're started on September 2nd. Lauren met Melvin Sean Rowland, who I will refer to as Roland from here on out, at a local bar where he was working as a bouncer, and immediately began a relationship with him. He visited her often at the residence hall and built friendships with other students in the building. On October 9th, while on vacation, Lauren learned of Roland's real identity and his criminal background, including his actual age and the fact that he was a registered sex offender. At that point, she decided to end the relationship. She arrived back home. She invited Roland up to her dorm and confronted him with the information. He admitted to the sex offender status, but denied the age difference, still claiming that he was 30 years old. Lauren told him she was ending the relationship, but allowed him to stay the night, and then the next day, October 10th, lent him her car to run errands. On October 10th, campus dispatch was contacted by Lauren's mother, Jill McCluskey. Jill was aware of Lauren's boyfriend and that she had found out some incriminating details about her boyfriend, and she was worried that if she had to go pick up this car, that her daughter was going to be going alone. So our dispatchers talked to Jill McCluskey, arranged to contact Lauren, and make sure that she was taken care of. The dispatchers did contact Lauren, were able to get a hold of her, and at first she refused. She stated that she didn't feel uncomfortable with with Roland coming up to her apartment. He was going to be dropping the car off at her dorm room, and that if anything changed and she needed assistance, that she'd give us a call back. Our dispatchers again called back Ms. McCluskey, who lives in Washington State, and explained the situation to her, that we got a hold of her. She doesn't feel like she needs our assistance. She doesn't feel like there's any threat at this point in time. She just wanted to recover her car. But if she needed something, that we would make sure that we would do that. We also sent security officers to the parking lot of her dorm area to make sure that if he did show up and anything was going to go wrong, that we had people in the area. At 5 p.m., Lauren called back. Apparently the situation had changed and the car had been dropped off by Roland at the stadium parking lot. And she needed a ride to go get her car because she was at her dorm, which is several blocks from the stadium parking lot. We sent a security escort to pick her up, which we do for many, many different people on campus on a regular basis. She was picked up, she was taken to the stadium parking lot. The dispatcher who was on duty was still concerned, pulled up the cameras, found the car, made sure she got in the car and drove away and returned to her dorm without any incident. On October 12th, we'll move forward a couple days. Lauren contacted the University Police Department to report having received suspicious emails that she believed were from friends of her ex-boyfriend, Roland. The text stated that Roland was dead and it was Lauren's fault. She was able to determine by looking at social media that that was untrue. He had just posted something recently. The reporting officer asked Lauren if she felt in danger or threatened by the text. She stated she did not, but that she felt his friends were trying to lure her somewhere and she didn't understand why. The officer told her not to go anywhere that made her uncomfortable, if she needed assistance from the police in any way, but to call back if she received any more messages or contacts. Fast forward another day to October 13th. Lauren again contacted the university police to report receiving additional messages. This time she believed they were from her ex-boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend's friends. The messages were coming in with several different telephone numbers, several different email addresses, many of which we believe are spoofed that we found out through this investigation, so she wasn't sure where this was exactly coming from. The messages demanded money in exchange for not posting compromising photos of Lauren and Roland on the internet. Lauren stated she sent $1,000 to an account as demanded in hopes of keeping these photos off the internet and protecting her reputation. A report was taken by that patrol officer who pulled a criminal history, and a case was assigned to detectives to screen for sexual extortion charges. Blackmail, extortion, sexual extortion are all wrapped up in that. On October 19th, the formal investigation of the extortion charges begins. A detective contacted Lauren to gather additional information about the extortion, to identify all suspects possibly involved because we weren't sure if it was Roland and his friends, or others, and to seek an arrest warrant for Roland and any of his acquaintances responsible for an alleged crime. On October 19th through October 22nd, we now know security video shows us on campus that Roland was at various locations on campus, and at that time it appeared that he was looking for Lauren without her knowledge. October 22nd, 10:39 a.m. Lauren emailed the police department after she had received an additional text from a spoofed number that she didn't recognize, claiming to be Deputy Chief McLennan, requesting she come to the police station. Not knowing who Deputy Chief McLennan was, and knowing that that wasn't the police department's phone number, which is readily accessible, she didn't respond. University police now believe that text came from Roland with the intent of getting Lauren to leave her dorm room. We later discovered that Roland was outside of her dorm room at that time, appearing to be looking around and waiting for her to leave, and that was his attempt to get her to leave the dorm room. October 22nd, 3 to 6 p.m., we now know that Roland spent the afternoon waiting for Lauren with some of her friends in the residence hall. Like I said earlier, he had spent 30 days in a relationship with Lauren. He was a very manipulative and very good at manipulating people, and he became friends with many of them. This allowed him to contact people and allow him into the dorms at any time because they were friends at this point in time. October 22nd, 8:20 p.m., Roland confronted Lauren, who was on the phone with her mother, in the parking lot right outside of her residence hall where we had viewed him on camera several days prior. In the altercation, she dropped her cell phone and her belongings. He dragged Lauren to a different spot in the parking lot where he forced her into the back seat of a car. That he had driven to campus, and he shot her in the car multiple times. At 8:23 p.m. on October 22nd, our dispatch received a frantic call from Matt McCluskey, her father, stating he believed his daughter was in trouble, and relayed that her mother had heard on the phone and requested the officers to respond. They were on the phone with her at this time. She says, no, the phone goes dead, and they don't even know where she's at. They know that she's on her way back from a class, but they have no idea where she's at on campus. At the time, the dispatcher was collecting information about this call and trying to find out and help the family figure out where their daughter was. One of the officers from the case that was taken on October 12th happened to be in the dispatch center, heard the name Lauren McCluskey, and was able to say, I know exactly where she lives. I took this case last week of the strange text. That would allow officers at 8:32 to arrive on scene and start searching to figure out what happened. When they arrived, another student had picked up her backpack and her cell phone and was in the process of talking to her mother on the phone. The officers immediately they knew who the subject was that we were looking for, Lauren, and they immediately went to her room and searched her room to find out if she had gone in her room or where she'd been taken. They searched the entire building. They called for additional resources, and then they started canvassing, and canvassing is a term we use to identify anybody that may have seen something in the neighborhood. They started canvassing the area for anybody that was outside, anybody that could have seen anything, and anybody that could have heard anything. We now know at 8:38 p.m., approximately 6 minutes after officers arrived, Roland is picked up by an acquaintance and leaves campus. We confirmed that through video evidence that we have that he got in that vehicle and left at 8:38. At 9, At 9:55 p.m., after speaking with several witnesses, after being informed of, somebody said, we possibly heard shots fired, but it didn't sound like a normal gun. It was really, really quiet, so we didn't know what it was. The officers located on a secondary search of the parking lot Lauren's body in the backseat of that vehicle. Immediately upon locating her, approximately 1 minute later, a secure in place alert was sent campus-wide that stated there had been a shooting on campus. At 10:09, another alert was sent with the suspect information, and updates were sent approximately every 30 minutes reiterating the secure in place order. At 11:46 p.m., alert sent lifting secure in place order after university police determined the suspect had left campus. It took us getting resources into the department to start scouring the numerous cameras we have on campus to figure out where he had gone, and it was at that point in time we had confirmed that he had left at 8:38 p.m. At 12:01 a.m., the alert sent identifying the shooting suspect. We had identified a physical description earlier. We put out the actual name and everything else at 12:01. And at 12:46 a.m., Salt Lake City Police Department located Roland, engaged in a foot pursuit off of 600 South. He entered a Trinity AME church, and as police entered the church, he shot himself. At October 23rd at 1:47 a.m., the alert sent saying Roland had been located and was no longer a threat. It took us time to make sure that the person we had in the church was the person we were searching for, and it was at that point a crime scene. This is the basic timeline of the events, and I'd like to answer some questions I know all you have, but prior to doing that, I would like to pose a few questions that I know that have been on everybody's mind, and try to answer them as best as possible. The first one is, where did Roland get the gun that he used in this attack? Roland, like I said, was a manipulator. If his lips were moving, he was lying. I don't think he told the truth to anybody based on our investigation and based on everybody we've talked to. Roland borrowed the gun from an acquaintance under the pretense that he wanted to teach his girlfriend how to shoot, and she had a real interest in learning how to shoot a gun. That individual, upon finding out about this crime, contacted the police department proactively, said, I believe I know where that individual got the gun, and I'm just as horrified as you are. I did not realize that's what it was for. He's fully cooperating with the investigation, and at this time, no charges are pending against that individual. Who picked Roland up on Monday night after the shooting? Was this a friend? Was this an acquaintance? We now know that Roland had called a woman he had met on a dating site a couple days earlier, asked her for a ride, saying he just finished a workout here at the University of Utah. She agreed. They went to dinner at a local restaurant. They drove to the state capitol, and then they went to her home in downtown Salt Lake City, where Roland took a shower. She later dropped him off at a coffee shop downtown. Subsequently, she saw news reports about the shooting, recognized the photos of Roland, and she contacted us proactively as well. The woman is fully cooperating with the investigation, and it is not anticipated she will face any charges. This was another person Roland had duped into thinking he was a great guy and he could do no wrong. And immediately after shooting and killing his girlfriend, was able to go to dinner, go to the Capitol, and go to her house and act as if nothing was amiss. People want to know, how did the university identify Roland as the suspect in the shooting and determine that he had left campus? We covered that a little bit before. We do have security cameras on campus. It takes time to get resources there, but we mustered all of our resources. We were able to identify him based on a description that was given to us by the parents of Lauren, who suspected, since this was a recent breakup, that he may be part of this incident. That led to us identifying him quickly through the camera footage, and also identifying that he had left the area, what kind of car he left the area in, and ultimately allowed us to find him and pursue him. Why didn't University Police contact adult parole and probation on October 13th after learning he was a registered sex offender? That's a fair question. And the police, my police department, we were investigating what we understood at the time was an extortion case. and did not believe that there was enough evidence at that time to share with other law enforcement. Our current investigative process is to gather evidence that supports the claim and then make contact with the suspect. It's during that phase we would have reached out to APNP for assistance. Another question that I've heard posed and talked about is, why didn't University Police assist Lauren in getting a restraining order or a protective order? We did believe that Roland and or his associates both were threatening her financially and reputationally, but there was no indication from Lauren to us at any point in this investigation that he was threatening physical harm. And that was evidenced by, oh, he can bring the car to my apartment. He was very, very good at getting people to trust them. And Lauren was no different, and she had just spent a relationship with him for 30 days and had just recently broken up with him. And his skill and ability to do this and to con people has been evidenced in the past throughout his prior life and has been evidenced here a lot. And then finally, what was Roland's criminal history? I believe everybody in this room may or may not know that now, but in 2004, he was convicted of enticing a minor. He spent time in prison and was on parole supervision. For the details about his past, I'd refer you to the court records and the Utah Department of Corrections. I just want to close before we open this thing up to questions to say I believe my officers in my department work in a very, very tough environment, and their actions were appropriate and worked very diligent that evening to do everything they could to solve this crime, and made every attempt to make sure that Lauren, throughout this process, if she felt physically threatened or if she felt like she was in personal harm, that if she needed to tell us so we could help her. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen for us. I'll close by saying again that I want to thank publicly the parents for allowing me to meet with them and share these details with them, because I can't imagine how hard it would be to hear all of these details about your own daughter. And they've asked us to ask you that they need some time. It's their time to heal. It's their time to process. And that if they have any questions to come to the police department, I'm sharing these updates with you now. I've shared them with them before. If we have any further updates that we learn through this investigation, and I'm sure we will learn many more updates about Roland's life and interactions with Lauren, that I will share them with you too, but to please respect their privacy. She said she made the statement so that she could get that out there and then be left alone and have time to heal. So if you would respect that, I would truly appreciate that. And with that said, I think we can open it up to any questions you might have.
I would ask, one at a time, state your name, outlets. We want to record it so that, again, folks can watch this and do this as well. So we'll start.
Yeah. Grab that.
If you just talk about it.
All right. I'm Nate Carlisle from the Salt Lake Tribune. Can you elaborate on why not contact APNP? I know you said you were still gathering evidence, but with someone that's on papers like that, couldn't APNP have helped you build a case, or they would have been a resource to learn more about this individual or something? Can you elaborate on that?
So our current investigative process is to identify, who's involved in the crime. At this particular time, we knew that Mr. Roland was probably involved, but maybe some of his friends. Now that we've gone through investigation and we have a lot of information, we realized that it was more than likely Roland using his manipulative tactics to think that his friends were involved when it was really him. He had multiple cell phones, and he had multiple spoofed email and texting apps that he was using to cover his identity. Until we have the current process, until we have, in an extortion case, until we have evidence, which is all digital in this day and age, to prove that somebody is doing this, and we have identified all of our suspects, we don't normally use APNP to reach out for these types of things until we need to make suspect contact, at which time we would have reached out to APNP and done that. But we were still in the preliminary. We weren't at that point of the investigation at that time.
Jeremy Harris with Channel 2. Did you know that Roland was on parole before October 22nd?
We knew that he was a registered sex offender. Outside of that, I personally didn't know he was currently on parole. I knew that he had a criminal history and that he was a registered sex offender.
Brady McCombs, AP. If you had known he was on parole, would you have contacted his parole officer immediately?
In the extortion case, the parole officer has the right to bring them in and to contact them and tell them that they need to come in and report. We didn't want to lose any of our evidence before we had identified any of our suspects. We hadn't even gotten to the point of identifying who the friends may have been. And in order to get digital information back from spoofed websites or real websites, that requires subpoenas to the companies to provide them to us. So it's a timely process. And once again, when we do our independent review of our process and our protocols, if there's things we need to change or do better, we will.
Andrew Adams, KSL5. Do you believe that any of his friends or associates then, I mean, just to be clear, face any kind of culpability moving forward for anything, or?
So at this point in time, based on the last 48 hours of investigation, we believe Roland was behind all of this and that he was using this as another tactic of manipulation to confuse Lauren and to confuse anybody that might be onto him if something were to occur and he were to get found out. That wasn't known to us prior to this. That is known to us now.
Michael Locklear with Channel 2. With the lifting of the secure in place after you had identified that he had left campus, was there no concern that he might come back to campus?
With any type of crime such as this, we had searched the immediate area for an hour and a half. He got into a vehicle. We saw the vehicle leave our campus. At some point in time, some of these cases go days, months, even longer before you capture your suspect. We have to return to business eventually, and we were confident that he had left our campus in a vehicle, and most times, I will never say all times, but at most times, someone who's committed a crime wants to get as far away as possible as to not being caught, and that was the case in this situation.
If I got your timeline right, there was 6 days in between when she filed the complaint and you opened the investigation began. What was the delay about?
So our detectives have many cases, and our detective started work on the Tuesday after this initial the report on the 13th, and was working other cases until Friday. And then Friday, a text message came in, another one came in that was suspicious. She opened the case immediately because she had received some contact from Lauren, and that's why she did that on Friday.
Kind of bumped up the case, the priority of the case?
Because additional items were being received at that time. Yes.
Yeah, John Franke, Fox 13. Why wouldn't the person who gave him the gun face any charges? I understand that they're cooperating, but this is a sex offender here.
Well, so and as I stated earlier, at this point in time, they are not facing those charges. But like I said, he was very manipulative. He was very good at what he did, and he considered him a friend and an acquaintance and was able to say, this is why I'm doing this. This is what I want to use it for. I'm just going to go target shooting. We don't believe at this time he had any knowledge that Roland was a convicted sex offender and on parole and a convicted felon. That at least, go ahead.
I can answer that a little bit. In all reality, we build the case. We conduct all the interviews. Once we complete this, we will present it to the district attorney. The district attorney will then actually make the decision formally on whether or not he believes that charges should be filed on an individual or not. So we technically do not determine that. We conduct the investigation.
Thank you.
Nick McGurk from ABC4. Can you tell us where they went, the coffee shop and the restaurant, and is there surveillance video of that? There's so many details that are disturbing about this, but that is just so striking that he would have been able to do that after a murder.
I can tell you that it was a local restaurant. I mean, that they went to. Yes, there is surveillance video, and yes, that is part of our investigation, is to piece all of this back together so we can hopefully understand as much as we possibly can, share it with the family so they can kind of get some closure to understand what happened, and then eventually share all of that information with you. I'd prefer not to share the names of the places at this point, but at some point we will definitely do those.
I know you touched on it, but just your reaction to the fact that someone could do this after committing murder, just go to dinner and act like everything was normal.
Personally, I can't fathom how anybody with a conscience could murder their girlfriend and then go have dinner with somebody else and act like nothing happened. I mean, that's probably one of the most disturbing details of this case for me, is that it takes a real special piece of work to do that, somebody that is very demanded and very manipulative and that has no conscience to pull something off like that.
Monica with Gephardt Daily. How did Salt Lake Police locate him in Salt Lake?
Yeah, I'd prefer not to go into the specific details of that, but it was from our investigation that we were conducting. We identified an area where we believed that he was at during the course of the investigation. We then made contact with Salt Lake and requested they respond to that area. Upon them responding to that area, they did come into contact with him, and after a short foot pursuit, he entered the building where he ended his life.
Yeah, Michael with Channel 2 again. President Watkins, can you clarify who will be doing these investigations? Is this an independent firm, or are these going to be university officials who are conducting them?
We do not yet know the specific individuals that we will reach out to, but what we are committed to do is independent of the university. And of course, we want to identify and use individuals with expertise in the critical areas. So our commitment is a fully independent of the university review, both on the campus safety task force and on of the work of our police department with independent experts.
Emily Anderson, Daily Utah Chronicle. What will be the timeline of that review?
As soon as I know more about that, I'll let you know. We're committed to starting as soon as we can, and we'll give you information about the timeline as soon as we can.
President Watkins, from what you know in the detailed timeline, do you think there's anything that your police could have done differently to prevent this?
I want you to know that I have great confidence in the diligent work of the University Police Department, of Chief Brophy, and of our officers. We have not uncovered mistakes. We do want, together, both of us are committed to an independent review to learn what we can and stay committed to campus safety for everyone at the University of Utah.
Let's do with that. Kathy, Brooke, you want to pass out the... So, okay. So I would say let's end it there. Thank you all. So if you guys will hang out just a second, we will have the detailed timeline that we passed out. I think we had to make a couple of revisions to it in real time. So thank you all for coming. Let's have you guys.